I'd rather keep it real with ya.
Hi everybody, it's me Minu. I know you didn't see me last week. That's because life got too busy and I just couldn't do it. Um but this week I wanted to talk about what it's like being black. Now, here's the funny thing is that I completely forgot to plan to make this video. And the crazy thing about that is, like, you would think, like, obviously be like you talked about being black before. Of course you would make a video about being black. Being black for me is like, being a fish in water. Like, it's there. Like, it's not something that, of course, it affects everything around me, but it's not like I'm just sitting up here like, man, being black is nothing like being Asian. Like, I have no idea. I'm just like, black. That's just my lived experience and how I've always just lived my life. So it's kind of weird. Sadie, do you need something? You seem like you need something. Can you go somewhere, please? Can you, Sadie, get down, please. Also, last week I was getting my hair done, and if anybody knows anything about being black, or black people, it takes a long time to get your hair done, especially when you're natural like me. But I thought, what better way to do a video about being black than having like my natural hair out, you know, with the inches, and to have a shirt on that says, let me color, Black Girls Rock. Oop, hold on. Sorry, my boobs are too big for the shirt to fit. Here we go. Black Girls Rock. Anyway, just a little background about me personally. I grew up in an all black neighborhood, a poor black neighborhood. The only white people that I saw or interacted with were like the white people who taught at my school. Those white people, like, they went to college, they went to like a liberal arts college, and they really want to change the world, and they watch Freedom Riders or whatever those movies are where you help the inner city kids. Yeah, so we had those type of white people, but even that, it wasn't a lot of white people. So I didn't really have a lot of interaction with like a myriad of white people, or exposure to a myriad of white cultures. Another thing that I guess a lot of people found surprising, people who didn't come from poor black communities, is how my schools were structured. So starting in middle school, meaning sixth grade, and I don't know how the elementary schools are now. They're probably doing it now, given all the current climate of things. But starting in sixth grade, middle school, we had metal detectors. So before you even came into the school, you would have to go through a metal detector. And sometimes you get patted down. You got boobs. Well, they lifting them hoes up. They trying to see what you got under there. Um, and it was under the guise in middle school and high school, we had metal detectors. And it was always under the guise of, well, we don't want you to. You done, Sadie? It was always under the guise of, well, we don't want you guys to have any like weapons on you, or they were also searching for drugs, but really it was just a way for them to like take your stuff. Like, things that they would confiscate from us had nothing to do with weapons or drugs. Like, they would take our phones because they'd be like, no phones in school, so they take our phones, and we have to wait 3 days to get them back. They would take food from us because they would accuse us of selling the food. Like, if it seemed like we had too much food, they would be like, oh, this is obviously to sell. They would take the food from us and they would eat it. They'd be like, your parents aren't going to come up here to get your food. So they would take, your hot chips. They would take your drinks, your candies, whatever it is. If you had too much of it, they would take it and they would just eat it. So it was very much an authoritarian way that our schools were set up. And even in high school, I remember sometimes we would get, and we call it getting searched. My high school was a lot bigger than my middle school, of course. So if the principal was mad at us at that time, they would just funnel everybody into the auditorium. And then the only way to leave the auditorium would be after we've searched like your pockets and your bags and stuff. And they would take your phones. It was a weird time because, this is the 2000s. And in the 2010s, even when I was in high school, and it's like you get to a point where you need technology. Like, our only phone was the cell phone. We didn't have a landline. And they would take that. And then my mom would come up to the school and be like, hey, that's her only way of communicating with me when I'm at work. Give her her phone back. And they'll be like, nope. She broke the rules by bringing it to school. She's going to have to wait 3 days to get it back. And it was literally just because they wanted to punish us. And there was no real reason behind it. And when I talk about stuff like that, like white people or people from like a wealthier background or even a middle class background, they get so shocked and they're like, that's a violation of your rights. You should have sued them. Fuck, I know about suing. Fuck, poor people know about suing people. You know, what do we know about rights? They don't teach us our rights. They teach us what's wrong. So you can only ever fuck up or not fuck up. There's no, this is what you deserve as a human being. You're not. This is authoritarian school. And another thing that was very obvious to me, even in middle school, was the profiling. And I know it sounds weird to say there was like racial profiling at the schools because the school was all black, but it was more of the situation of, you look like a problem, so I'm going to search you. So in middle school, there'd be a lot of times where, because I was a nerd and the teachers knew me as a nerd, they wouldn't send me through the metal detector, you know, or they wouldn't get the metal detector and do the wand on me. They just say, oh, go on ahead, Minu. And my cousin, who was the same age as me, who she would look like a troublemaker or look like one of those bad kids, they would send her through the metal detector. It was completely arbitrary who went, you know. Everybody didn't go because obviously if every single person went through the metal detector and got searched, school could never start. They would just pick and choose who went, kind of like the things that I would read about the TSA or the jokes that black people would make about the TSA, like the white people just walk on by and then the black guy or the brown guy just gets stopped for a random search. That was exactly how I was treated in middle school and high school. And it was purely based off of like, if you looked like you might be a problem. In high school, though, because it was a lot bigger, I didn't know all of the teachers as well. There were still times where even I was viewed as a problem. And I'm the nerdy kid with the little square glasses, got my big backpack on, full of all my books, breaking my back. Not really, you know, it balancing out my boobs really was what the backpack was for. But I would get stopped in the hallway and by like these male teachers or male administrators, and they would stop me and they would grab my backpack and they'd be feeling on it and they tell me to open it up and look inside of it to make sure that I don't have anything in there, and it would just be books. And I'd be like, and by that time, the way I had been treated in middle school, I was like, why would you think that I would have, you know, anything crazy in my backpack? Obviously I'm a nerdy kid. I look like a nerdy kid. Why would you even stop me? But it was just more about the power and control for them and maintaining order. So it's so weird how schools, and these are black teachers, black administrators, black principals, how they prepare you for being mistreated as an adult because they treat you like you're a problem even when you're a kid. Like even in middle school, I remember seeing kids who look like problems. They didn't just go through the metal detector. Like they got the wand on them. They had all their stuff searched. They digged in their pockets. They would have them take their shoes off to like see if they had anything in their shoes. I know girls would try to hide like their phones and stuff in their bras and everything because, you know, back when I was younger, they had the little small phones, little flip phones. They would try to hide them in their bras. They would like fill them up, or they'd make them like lift up their boobs and like see what comes out and like all types of things that now that I think about it, I'm like, man, that was kind of fucked up. But also you could take our phones and there was no danger that the phone posed, except maybe a student might be using it in class when they weren't supposed to. But either way, like if the teacher saw you using your phone, they could take the phone from you anyway. So there was really no point to be so aggressive about it. And then there was one time we were being searched because the principal was mad at us for embarrassing him in high school. And the woman was like going through my bag, like she was like really just trying to find something on me. And I got annoyed because the way she was acting, she was just like flipping stuff upside down and stuff. And then she pulled out my calculator, which is you know, them little old ass calculators, little tiny one that you have no idea how it has the battery to stay on for years at a time. She'd pull it out looking at it. And I was like, it's a calculator. Like, what are you doing? And then she got mad at me for giving her attitude. So she searched my bag extra hard till she found my little flip phone and was like, see, I wouldn't have even taken if you didn't give me all that attitude. And I was like, someone's having a bad day. Okay, I'm gonna let you go on with that. It was very frustrating to be treated like that, especially when I've grown up and I've heard stories of people at these like middle class schools or these white schools where they literally had like heroin and shit in their lockers. Like, they were so strict on me in school, I couldn't even go to my locker because the school was big and my locker was in one place and I could never make it to my locker in time to make it to the next class. And if you didn't make it to the next class, by the time the bell rang, you had to go to the office. And if you went to the office, you was going to get a 3-day suspension. Well, depending on how the administrators felt that day. Sometimes the administrators would be like, 1-day suspension. But then there'd be periods where they'd all be mad and they'd just be like, every single thing you do is a 3-day suspension. You know, talking in the cafeteria, you know, we had silent lunches. Talking in the cafeteria, 3-day suspension. Late to class, 3-day suspension. One time, my teacher got mad at me. It was a black woman. I was late to class by like a few seconds, and it literally wasn't my fault because I got dropped off at the time I got dropped off. And dropping kids off at school was hard because it was so many of us, and the parents was dropping their kids off and leaving. So I got dropped off, and then I had to run to class. Couldn't stop at my locker, had to run straight to class. And then I got there and the bell rang and she was like, go to the office, you know, get your suspension and then come back to class. And naturally, I wasn't going to do that. I'm like, I'm not going to get a suspension. Fuck that. So I found a teacher who let me hang out in his class until the next period. So then the next day, so I ended up not getting a suspension because I just didn't go to the office to get it. And then the next day she got mad at me and I think she was going to put a point on my attendance or something for class because she was like, I told you to go to the office and come back. And I was like, I'm not getting a 3-day suspension just because you felt like it. I'd rather you be mad at me because she was like, you didn't come back to class and I know you were here. So you were skipping class. And I was like, I'd rather skip class and you give me a little thing on my point for my attendance in class than get a 3-day suspension on my record, ma'am. I'm trying to go to college. I can't have nothing on my record. You playing. And it was this same teacher, to talk a little bit about harken a little bit back to the mental illness episode. It was the same teacher that when one of the students in my class, like, took a bunch of pills and like overdosed because they were trying to commit not alive, who just got mad at the student who was literally laying on the floor crying. And they got mad at the student for basically, you know, interrupting their day, interrupting their class. So the black teachers at my school, they was on some bullshit. They did not really care about us. There was very few of them where I'd actually like talk to that teacher if I saw them out in public. A lot of them I would just completely ignore them and pretend I don't know them. Like that teacher who I mentioned in the atheism video, who did the whole thing about, well, like, if you believe in Jesus Christ and that he died for your sins, stand up. And then everybody stood up except for me, and it caused more bullying. And she was very rude to me all the time. And I know I should have called somebody, but who the fuck was I going to call? You know, I live in the South, poor black community. Everybody's Christian. And if you're not Christian, you just don't say shit. So there were a lot of times in these black schools where I was mistreated. I was treated like less than. I did not have any rights. It was very authoritarian. And I just had to go with it. That was just life for me. I didn't know any other way. I didn't know, you know, even my school was considered safer than the other schools, you know. So I was like, I mean, maybe the school is safer because they do treat us like criminals. Who knows? I had no way of knowing. Another thing that I've kind of talked about a little bit, but that I want to talk about here as well, was how being smart and like talking proper was seen as imitating white culture. This frustrates me a lot because, yeah, I liked reading books, and reading books meant that I had a better vocabulary, which meant that I did better in school. And I talked a certain way that wasn't ghetto or ratchet, but that didn't mean I wasn't black. That didn't mean I was trying to be white. It didn't mean that I was an Oreo, you know. And I think I had a conversation with one of my cousins before where she had talked about doing something intellectual. And then she said, like, you know, I'd be betraying my culture. I was like, how would it betray your culture? You know, being black does not equal being dumb. Being black does not equal being ratchet. You can be intelligent and black. You can speak multiple languages and be black. You can travel the world. You can make a lot of money and be black. You know, you could be interested in science and physics and astrology and, you know, psychology and all of those things and still be black. So it was very frustrating for me to have to like deal with that narrative because I wasn't faking it. I wasn't trying to appeal to white people. I didn't even know white people like that. I was just being me. And I think nowadays we're seeing a lot more people my age and older who are like the blurs, the black nerds who, or even the bleebs, even the black weebs, you know, like we are talking more about our nerd culture and we're making it our own, and we don't have to worry about people saying that we're not black. Because we are. You know, I do this. I live this. Another thing that's frustrating for me, being a black person, is that well, in America specifically, I can't speak to other locations. This is just me where I am. Being black means that everything you do is going to be representative of your entire culture. Everything you do that is seen by a non-black person, or sometimes even a black person, is going to represent every other black person that person interacts with. And it's so fucking frustrating because people like Nick Cage, I recently was looking at, I forgot the name of it. Did I put it here? No, I think it was called A Vampire's Kiss. But even in these Nick Cage movies, he gets to do whatever the fuck he wants. He gets to be crazy. Like, he gets to be like, you know, he like assaults people. He does drugs. He jumps around in his underwear. Like, he can do whatever he wants. And they're like, man, Nick Cage, he funny. And he just goes do whatever he wants. But when you're a black person, you have to be typecast in these specific roles, because if you go out and pull a Nick Cage and you like assault someone in the movie because that's what your character is like, people are going to be like, how dare you make black people look bad? You are representing all black people when you are on the screen. You got to make us look like kings and queens and superheroes and all of that stuff. And don't get me wrong. I like seeing us as superheroes. I like seeing us as leaders. I like seeing us as wealthy people and business people. Instead of always being portrayed as like gangsters and criminals. But also I like seeing like the awkward black girls, or the and I know this has a negative connotation, but the weak black girls. You know, there's some black girls who we don't want to fight. We don't want to be competitive. You know, we don't want to be the best looking person in the room. You know, we don't want to be pulling all the dudes, and you know, all the guys are falling in love with us. Some of us are asexual. We don't even want that in the first place. You know, we deserve to have a myriad of representation and not have to worry about, just because one black person played like a villain in a movie, that now they have to get roasted by black Twitter because you just made all black people look bad. Like, everything you do is representing other black people. And I've subscribed to it myself. I'm guilty of it myself. So don't think that I'm like being super judgy. When I was in Japan, I was very, very hyper aware of the fact that the people I was interacting with probably never met another black person. You know, I had some people who seen black people on TV and they was like, hey, what's up, my nigga? And I was like, okay. You know, I did deal with some stares, you know, some kids looking at me like they were scared, until I had to like smile and like be all cute and nice and stuff. And then they were like, oh, okay, you're okay. You know, and so I felt that. And there would be times when I would see other black people in Japan just acting a fucking fool. And I knew they was from America. And I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? Stop it right now. You're making us look bad, you know. And on one hand, that's the part of me that's like judging people who make us look bad. And another part of it was like, hey, you know, when you're on the train, you're supposed to be quiet. It's respectful. That's what everybody else is doing. Kind of, you're in somebody else's house. Don't fuck it up. There was one guy, I know I'm going in a bunch of different ways, but being black, it interacts with everything. Being black intersects with every part of your life. So there was a time after coming back from Japan and passing my Japanese test that I had a friend who his cousin wanted to learn Japanese. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, I'm down for it. I would have liked to be paid, but the guy kept saying he didn't have any money. So I was like, you know what? I got you, fam. It ain't even that serious, you know. I'm gonna help you out, especially if you care about actually learning the language and culture just like I do. So I met him and he gave me the whole spiel about how he cares about the culture and everything. But it's very clear that he didn't. It was very clear that he was a weeb. He was a bleep. And then also that the only reason he wanted to learn Japanese and go to Japan was because he was sexually attracted to Asian women. And he even justified it to me by saying Asian women were better than black women. Asian women were better than black women because Asian women were much more submissive and pretty and quiet and like all of those other like stereotypes about women. And it was so annoying. It was so annoying. And then when I actually tried to teach him things and like give him useful tips and resources, all he wanted was for me to actually teach him phrases like, I like you, I want to date you, let's go to a love hotel. And one, I didn't know those phrases because it just never meant anything for me to learn it. But two, you're a big black guy. If you run up to a Japanese woman on the street talking about some, I like you, I want to date you, she's going to run away. She might even call the police on your ass. You can't do that. Japanese people are very like conservative and reserved. Then he talked about how gross, like I was telling him about some of the practices there, some of the things people do. He talked about how gross it was, how nasty it was. I was like, that's not the attitude to have when you're in someone else's house. And then he talked about how he wanted to party and he wanted to dance on the street and Millie Rock and all of that craziness. And I was just like, when Japanese people are on the street, they just be walking to their next destination. Now, I know when you in the hood, you used to seeing a few people dancing on the street because they be on some, but you can't really do that in Japan. I mean, it's not illegal, but it's going to make you look weird. And I was so frustrated because I was like, you're going to make us look bad. You cannot play into the notions of the sexually aggressive black man. It's not going to work, and it's going to taint their experience with any other black person they meet because they're going to be like, they're loud, they're sexually aggressive and scary, and they don't respect our customs, you know. And then when he talked about bringing his other friends who didn't even, I would call them, you know, garden variety hood niggas to Japan with him, and they constantly, like just from the little time he spoke to them on the phone in front of me, constantly made Asian jokes, constantly was talking shit about Asian people and the stereotypes and stuff. And given the things that have just happened recently with the murders of those Asian women in Georgia, I think it was Georgia. Not now, Sadie. You got something you want to say, Sadie? What, Sadie? You want something? Sadie wanted to put in her 2 cents. It's offensive, you know, like. And even when I was going to Japan, my family was all talking shit, you know. They were talking about how I'm going to get kidnapped. And Ma'am, Sadie, I'm busy. I know I love you too, but I'm trying to make a video now. I love you too, but you got to go now. Come on. Anyway, so they made all types of jokes. They're like, what are you going to eat there? You know, all they eat is cats and dogs. And I was like, just going to deal with this. Can I have my thing back, please? And I ate plenty of shit there because I was in Tokyo. Like they had international people, they had Indian people there. I was eating Indian food. I was eating Chinese food. I was eating, you know, they had McDonald's and KFC and burger places. I was eating their Japanese fried chicken. Is delicious. Like it wasn't any problem eating because I don't even really like sushi, but that's not the only thing Japanese people eat. And it was so frustrating that they was constantly talking all this shit and making all these jokes. And if he was going to hang out with people like that, those people don't need to go to another country if they view these people a certain way, you know. And he just like laughed it off like it was funny. And I get it. You grow up like that. You laugh at those jokes. But what you need to understand is when you are trying to go to another country, you are trying to have like a cultural exchange. You're trying to have like a language exchange. You want to learn about the culture in a respectful way so that you don't offend the people there and burn bridges, you know. And Cause I mean, I'd had some negative experiences with people just because I didn't translate what they were saying properly, because Japan is a very much they kind of talk around the subject. They're not very direct with things. So I didn't get it until they got mad and was like, I'm telling you this. And I was like, oh, I ain't know it was that serious, fam. You was acting real nice at first. I don't know. So like I've had those moments, and then I corrected myself and I was like, okay, I understand that, Japanese people are very punctual. Black people, we like to be late. But if I'm going to be going to a Japanese event or going somewhere with Japanese people, I need to be on time. Period. It's respect. And Americans, we don't learn to respect other cultures the way we should. But that's enough about us representing every black person ever, anywhere.